Harley Davidson just betrayed millions of its own customers, and most riders have no idea it's already happening. Something's changing behind the counter, in the paperwork, and on the price tags. The brand that once sold freedom now feels like it's selling permission. Riders who've stood by Harley for decades are starting to realize what's really going on, and it's not good. We dug into the signs, quiet moves that the corporate never announced, but every loyal rider can feel. Stick around till the end, because once you see what Harley's been hiding, you'll never look at that logo the same way again. The promised riders bought. For over a century, Harley Davidson built its empire on loyalty, not contracts. Every mile, every handshake, every patch stitched onto a leather vest was proof that this company didn't just sell motorcycles, it sold identity. Riders bought into a brotherhood, a code of freedom forged in American steel. You didn't buy a Harley, you became one. But now, that loyalty feels like it's being cashed in. Riders across the country are realizing that the brand they defended for decades has quietly turned its back on them. Hidden policies, new restrictions, and shocking price jumps, all surfacing at once. It's not rumor anymore, it's real. What once felt like a sacred bond between craftsman and rider now feels like a corporate transaction. The betrayal isn't subtle. Riders who bled for this brand, veterans, truckers, blue-collar men and women, are watching the company they helped save sell them out for shareholders. This isn't the same Harley that stood for grit and rebellion. This is a Harley that talks about premium positioning and brand elevation, while its oldest supporters struggle to afford the bikes they helped make legendary. The roar of the V-twin used to mean freedom. Today, it sounds like profit. And the worst part? The company didn't announce the betrayal. It hid it, in fine print, behind dealer counters, and inside policies designed to bleed riders dry. The fine print switch. It started quietly, one policy change, then another. Longtime owners noticed something off when bringing their bikes in for routine service. Suddenly, warranty coverage they'd trusted for years no longer applied. Independent mechanics were out, only authorized. Harley service centers could perform the work. Replacement parts had to come directly from corporate channels. Miss one of those conditions, and your warranty vanished. Riders called it what it was, a shakedown. What once felt like a partnership now felt like control. One dealership insider leaked an internal memo outlining service compliance enforcement, warning employees not to inform customers until after the sale. That's not protection, that's entrapment. The company defended it as quality assurance, but nobody's fooled. Harley isn't chasing quality, it's chasing margins. Riders who've been rebuilding engines since the Reagan years don't need corporate approval to tighten a bolt. They built these machines long before anyone in today's boardroom could ride one. Forums exploded overnight. Mechanics, dealers, and lifelong owners compared notes. Each story sounded worse than the last. Warranty claims denied, maintenance prices doubled, and riders blacklisted from coverage for fixing their own bikes. The brand that once said freedom on two wheels was now dictating who could turn a wrench. That's not evolution. That's betrayal, disguised as policy. And the people who made Harley great, the men and women who kept the faith through every recession and recall, are realizing that the company they trusted has quietly turned them into customers, not comrades. But the fine print was just the first cut. The real shock came when riders walked into showrooms and saw just how high Harley was willing to price out its own legacy. If you've been watching this far, you already know the truth no one else is saying. Support real rider stories and straight talk. Hit that like button and subscribe. And drop a comment below. What's your take on all this? The best ones might end up in our next breakdown. Sticker shock in the showroom. Walking into a Harley dealership used to feel like entering a temple of chrome and heritage. The smell of oil, the glint of steel, the handshake of an honest salesman who probably rode the same roads you did. But this year, riders found something else price tags that felt like a gut punch. A touring bike that cost $20,000 just a few years ago now stretches well past $30,000. Limited editions break $40,000 without hesitation. Financing plans read like mortgage contracts, and markups vary wildly by region. Even used Harleys, once a proud fallback for working riders, are climbing fast-fueled by limited inventory and corporate pricing pressure. Riders who spent their lives loyal to the brand now face a choice between debt and disappointment. One longtime owner from Texas put it bluntly, "I could buy a new truck for what they're asking for a bagger." For the generation that built Harley's reputation, veterans, tradesmen, truckers, these numbers aren't just high, they're insulting. The company defends the hikes as a reflection of premium positioning and brand elevation. But when a company starts using luxury language for what was once the people's bike, you know the soul of the machine is slipping away. Harley's strength was never exclusivity. It was community. And a community priced out of its own identity doesn't stay loyal forever. That's when the frustration turned into something sharper, anger. Because what began as quiet disappointment started boiling over into open protest. While Harley plays the numbers game, riders like us keep it real. The gear and accessories I actually use are linked in the description. From pride to protest, every movement has a breaking point. For Harley riders, that point came when pride finally met reality. Online forums exploded with threads titled, "Harley sold us out," and "They forgot who built them." Longtime customers compared notes on canceled orders, warranty refusals, and dealership markups. The tone wasn't just bitter, it was heartbroken. Rallies that once felt like reunions began to sound different. Instead of chrome laughter and revving engines, you heard conversations about betrayal. Some club chapters quietly dropped official Harley sponsorships. Others organized independent rides, a symbolic reclaiming of the road from corporate hands. For the first time in decades, riders who bled Harley orange were starting to question if the brand still deserved that color. Dealers caught in the middle felt the strain too. A few even defied corporate orders, offering unofficial discounts or free labor to keep riders coming back. They knew the truth. This wasn't just about money, it was about faith. Once trust is broken between a rider and his machine, the brand's paint job can't fix it. The storm brewing in the community isn't a short-term backlash. It's the start of something deeper, a reckoning. Riders who once treated the bar and shield like a flag are now demanding answers from the company that raised it. They're not just angry, they're mobilized. And when riders start riding for a cause instead of a company, the open road becomes a protest line. The question now isn't whether Harley can survive the backlash, it's how they let it happen in the first place. And that takes us behind the scenes, into the decisions that started it all, inside the playbook. Every revolution in a company begins with a spreadsheet. For Harley Davidson, that sheet started circulating quietly near the end of 2024. Dealers began whispering about a new strategy memo called the Hardwire 2.0 initiative. It wasn't about engines, riders, or even bikes. It was about margins, profit per unit, shareholder return, and quarterly performance. Inside that document, phrases jumped out like cold steel. Optimize dealer profitability, reduce low-yield SKUs, and align retail pricing with brand aspiration. Those words may impress investors, but to riders, they read like a funeral notice. The heritage of the brand was built on sweat, not stock options. Yet, leadership circles in Milwaukee began focusing on analysts instead of asphalt. The new corporate rhythm favored graphs over gears. Earnings calls spoke of monetizing legacy, as though the roar of the V-twin had become an intangible asset to be leveraged rather than a promise to be honored. What once made Harley unique, its refusal to play by the boardroom rulebook, was being dissected by that same rulebook. What hit hardest wasn't the business logic. It was the realization that emotion had been engineered out. The idea that loyalty could be replaced with lifestyle marketing, that trust could be measured in yield percentages. It was a cold kind of betrayal. Harley wasn't losing riders because of bad machines, it was losing riders because it forgot who the machines were built for. And that shift didn't happen by accident. It came straight from the boardroom, where numbers started outranking brotherhood. Boardroom over brotherhood. Step inside those meetings, and you won't hear talk of throttle response or long-haul comfort. You'll hear the language of Premiumization. That word became the golden calf of modern Harley management. In 2025, leadership declared that Harley's future would focus on the high-value segment. Translation: fewer affordable models, more luxury positioning. For anyone who scraped and saved to own a Softail or a Dyna back in the day, it felt like being erased from the family photo. One executive reportedly described older, budget-minded riders as non-core growth demographics. Those are people who rode through blizzards, who crossed the Dakotas in rain gear, who filled the parking lots at Sturgis. Now, in the pursuit of prestige, they were being treated like outdated data points. Every discontinued model, every cut to mid-range production, was another nail in the coffin of Harley's inclusive culture. By moving toward premium-only production, Harley cut its own heart out. The machines still looked right, still sounded right, but something deeper changed. When you build bikes for accountants instead of riders, the metal might shine brighter, but it loses its soul. That's what happens when the boardroom forgets that pride doesn't appear on a quarterly report. The damage wasn't limited to headquarters. Down on Main Street, the people who sold the dream were caught in the crossfire, dealers in the crossfire. In small towns across America, dealerships used to be more than showrooms. They were community hubs. Mechanics knew every customer by name. You'd stop in for a gasket and stay for a story. But by early 2025, many dealers were under suffocating pressure. Corporate mandates required new showroom layouts, costlier signage, and minimum order volumes for models that fewer customers could afford. A small dealership in Indiana shared that their annual operating costs rose nearly 20% since the new retail policy launched. The numbers didn't add up. Dealers were being told to project exclusivity in communities that valued accessibility. One owner put it bluntly, "They tell us to be luxury, but our riders are farmers, welders, and truckers. We can't sell aspiration when people just want a dependable bike." The squeeze forced some shops to raise prices, while others stopped ordering entirely, leaning on used inventory to survive. Independent shops, the kind that kept old Evolution engines running for decades, felt the chill too. When corporate policies tighten parts access and service authorizations, loyalty becomes collateral damage. A few dealers banded together, creating informal co-ops to share parts and keep customers happy. But the sense of unity that once defined the Harley network was fading, fast, and when the dealers struggled, the cost didn't stop there. It rolled downhill straight toward the riders' wallets. The cost spiral. Every small adjustment in Milwaukee's accounting office has a ripple effect that lands squarely on the rider's invoice. Tariff fluctuations, shipping surcharges, interest hikes on financing. Each tweak may look harmless in a spreadsheet, but together they form a storm. Riders now face documentation fees that used to be absorbed by dealers, new setup charges, and mandatory accessories folded into final sales. What was once a clear deal has become a maze of micro costs. One retired truck driver broke it down. "I paid $22,000 for my Electra Glide back in 2015. Today, that same setup is $32,000, and the service plan is double." That isn't progress, it's a chokehold. The irony is that while Harley markets heritage, it's quietly creating a financial barrier between the brand and the very people who built that heritage. The result is a slow erosion of trust. The kind that doesn't make headlines, but bleeds loyalty mile by mile. The brand still sells the dream of American freedom, but the fine print reads like a mortgage agreement. For many, the math no longer works, because behind every rising price and tightened policy lies a deeper loss, the human one, where the road starts to empty, and the brotherhood begins to fade. The riders left behind. Every movement has its faithful, the ones who held the line through the lean years, who rode when the company was hanging by a thread. For Harley Davidson, those faithful riders are veterans, truckers, factory workers, and long-haul wanderers who wore the badge like armor. They bought their first Harley in the 1970s or 80s, and many kept them running through every recall, every downturn, every broken promise, because they believed in what that machine represented. These are the riders who know every bolt by feel, who still keep paper service manuals in the garage, who remember riding from Sturgis to Daytona with nothing more than a saddlebag and a handshake. They gave Harley its soul. And now, many of them feel quietly cast aside. They see dealerships turning into boutiques. They see young executives who talk about market reach and lifestyle positioning instead of torque and tradition. They scroll through corporate press releases full of buzzwords and realize the brand that once spoke for them is now speaking past them. A veteran from Ohio summed it up simply, "I didn't serve my country to end up priced out of the company that used to stand for it." That's the heartbreak under all the noise, the feeling that loyalty, after 50 years, no longer counts. But this isn't just a story about individual heartbreak. It's about how an entire brotherhood starts to drift apart. When the brotherhood fractures, there was a time when rallies were pilgrimages, tens of thousands of bikes rolling into small towns, chrome, flashing like a river of freedom. Sturgis, Laconia, Daytona. These weren't just events. They were reunions of a family that understood one language, the rumble of the V-twin. Today, that sound feels thinner. Attendance numbers at major rallies have slipped, and the sea of denim and leather is showing more gray hair and fewer young faces. The generational bridge that kept this culture alive is crumbling. Younger riders look at Harley and see something their father's generation owned. Older riders look at the new lineup and see bikes they can't afford or maintain. The cultural torch has been dropped somewhere between those two perspectives. In clubhouses once filled with road stories, chairs sit empty. The old-timers still show up on Sunday mornings, but the conversations now turn to loss of friends, of affordability, of faith. Part of it is economics. Part of it is design. But most of it is identity. When the symbol that once united a brotherhood begins to fracture under its own marketing, something sacred disappears. Brotherhood is built on shared struggle. When that shared struggle turns into separate bank accounts, the brotherhood fades. Still, in the cracks of that fading bond, a few voices refuse to let go. They're the dealers who remember what this meant before the money took over. The dealers who fought back. Across America, some dealers decided not to follow every corporate order. They saw what was happening and quietly chose loyalty over profit. In towns like Amarillo, Biloxi, and Toledo, shop owners kept the doors open not because it made financial sense, but because it felt wrong to walk away from riders who trusted them for decades. These independent dealers scoured auctions for discontinued parts, rebuilt older twin cams, and offered free tune-ups for veterans on fixed incomes. One owner told me, "We don't just sell bikes, we keep promises alive." They became the last bastions of the old Harley spirit, where you could still get a cup of coffee, a story, and a fair deal without a membership plan or service subscription. These small rebellions came at a price-lost factory status, corporate penalties, and cut margins. Yet dealers and riders held the line. It wasn't about brand, it was community. In rebuilt carburetors, out-of-pocket fixes, and honest handshakes, the old Harley heartbeat still pulses quiet, stubborn and unmistakably alive. And when those lights dim at closing time, what's left is a road that's growing quieter every season. If you still believe riders deserve the truth, not marketing spin or polished headlines, subscribe now. Every week, we uncover the stories that matter to people who ride, build, and remember what Harley used to stand for. Stay tuned. The silence of the open road. There's a particular sound older riders can still recall, the steady pulse of a Harley engine echoing across an empty highway at dusk. That sound used to be everywhere, rolling through small towns, reflecting off gas stations and diners, humming through the night, like America's unofficial anthem. Now, the silence feels heavy. Fewer bikes on the road, fewer new riders to carry the torch forward. The open road hasn't changed. The sunsets still burn red over the plains. The asphalt still stretches like a promise toward the horizon. What's changed is the rhythm, the chorus that used to fill those miles. Many of the men and women who once rode together are aging out, selling their bikes, or parking them for good. The next generation doesn't hear the same call. They don't see Harley as the symbol of defiance it once was. And for those who do remember, each quiet mile feels like a funeral procession. For something larger than a motorcycle brand, it feels like the end of an era. In that silence comes awareness. If the company forgets its riders, the riders remember each other. They'll rebuild the brotherhood of grease, grit, and respect. The road isn't dead. It's waiting for those who still believe in the sound of freedom. Because when the noise fades and the silence sets in, the next question becomes clear. What does this loss mean for America itself? The industry takes note. Competition has always been the mirror that shows a company who it really is. As Harley Davidson fumbles through policy changes and public backlash, that mirror now reflects something brutal. Rivals are quietly doing what Harley once did, best earning trust. Indian Motorcycles has leaned into dependability and heritage, rolling out updated Thunderstroke engines with pricing that undercuts Harley's touring line by nearly $3,000. Honda's Goldwing remains the cross-country gold standard, while Kawasaki's Vulcan and Yamaha's Venture keep winning over the pragmatic crowd who just want a machine that lasts. Dealers from several states report that older riders, once fiercely loyal to the bar and shield, are now test-riding competitors for the first time in decades. The reason isn't performance, it's respect. Other brands are treating these riders not as disposable demographics, but as craftsmen of the road. They remember that reliability and honesty are worth more than slogans. Even aftermarket suppliers have noticed the shift. Parts once made exclusively for Harley now come stamped with Fits Indian or Universal Cruiser, as if the industry itself is bracing for a cultural migration. Harley's stumble has opened the door for everyone else. For the first time in 50 years, its rivals are no longer chasing its image. They're inheriting its soul. But every open door in the market comes with the same storm blowing through the economy. Economic crosswinds. The trouble isn't just corporate missteps, it's the economy tightening like a vice. Inflation has driven up steel prices, logistics costs, and interest rates on bike financing. Harley's own financial report for early 2025 showed revenue down roughly 5% year over year. That decline didn't come from lack of product, it came from a shrinking middle class of buyers who can no longer justify the dream. When interest rates hover near 7%, a $28,000 touring bike becomes a luxury no retiree can casually finance. Tariffs on imported parts make matters worse, forcing Harley to either absorb costs or raise prices again. The result is predictable. Fewer sales, tighter margins, more pressure from investors demanding cost efficiency. Numbers don't tell the whole story. The strain isn't just financial, it's cultural. Harley once symbolized resilience, now fragility. Its struggle mirrors American manufacturing itself. Once proud, now pressured, losing sight of the workers who built its legacy and kept its spirit alive. And nowhere is that truth felt more sharply than on the factory floor, where the hum of machinery carries both pride and bitterness, labor and legacy. Walk through the assembly lines in York, Pennsylvania, or Menomonee Falls, Wisconsin, and you can still smell the oil, the metal, the sweat of craftsmanship. These aren't just factories, they're temples of American labor. For decades, the men and women who built Harley Davidsons believed they were building something sacred. Their parents did it, their children might have done it, and their work was a handshake between worker and rider. American hands, American roads. But lately, that pride has been replaced by unease. Union reps speak in tones both proud and weary. Some talk of hiring freezes, outsourcing, and automation creeping closer. Others mention morale slipping after years of layoffs and corporate restructuring. "We used to feel like family," one machinist said. "Now we feel like line items." When a brand built on American grit starts chasing corporate coldness, something dies. Workers see its promises replaced by buybacks, bonuses over overtime. Yet they keep building. Because for them, making a Harley still means something, even if the board forgot why. But the truest verdict doesn't come from investors or factories. It comes from the riders themselves, the men and women who decide every day whether that name still deserves their loyalty, the rider's verdict. In the end, this story circles back to the open road, because all the press releases, investor calls, and marketing campaigns in the world can't drown out the sound or silence of riders who've had enough. They remember the promise that once defined Harley Davidson: freedom, honesty, and belonging. They bought into a legacy, not a luxury product. And now, with every price hike and policy shift, that legacy feels thinner. The verdict isn't delivered in headlines, it's delivered in garages, in the quiet choice to hold on to an older bike instead of buying new, in the decision to join a local repair co-op rather than pay dealership premiums, in the pride of keeping the old machines alive because the new ones come with too much paperwork and too little heart. Riders are voting with their keys, and every unused ignition switch is a message louder than any protest. When the dust settles, Harley's legacy won't belong to boardrooms, but to those who still ride, fix, and believe. Because this was never just a motorcycle, it was a trust. And trust isn't rebuilt in earnings reports. It's rebuilt in miles. The roar may have quieted, but the meaning remains, an unbroken echo of what it once meant to ride American steel, and a reminder that no corporation owns the soul of the open road. Harley might have forgotten who built this legacy, but riders haven't. The road still belongs to us, the ones who turn the wrenches, ride the miles, and tell the truth when the suits won't. So I want to hear it straight from you. Did Harley cross the line, or is this just business as usual? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because your stories matter more than their marketing. If you want more real talk for real riders, hit that like button, subscribe, and keep the rubber side down. This fight for freedom isn't over yet.